Imagine a world where eating a sandwich wrong could land you in jail, where sipping a simple drink might be illegal, and dancing at a festival could cost you a fine. Sounds insane, right? But across the globe, bizarre laws about food, drinks, and festivals are still enforced. Some so ridiculous, they'll make you question reality itself. Today, we're diving into 50 of the strangest, funniest, and downright absurd rules that are technically law. Get ready to be shocked, amused, and maybe even outraged. In Singapore, chewing gum isn't just frowned upon. It's essentially illegal unless prescribed for medical reasons. The government strictly regulates gum because they once had vending machines spewing sticky chaos on subway doors. Imagine getting fined for simply enjoying a minty chew. The law's absurdity becomes even stranger when you realize that this isn't about morality or safety. It's about maintaining pristine public spaces. Even tourists have been caught, paying hefty fines, turning a simple pleasure into a full-blown legal risk in this ultra-disciplined city-state. In France, it's illegal to name a pig Napoleon. While this may sound like a quirky anecdote, the law reflects France's obsession with historical reverence and national pride. Calling a swine by the emperor's name could technically insult his legacy, and locals take this seriously. Across the country, farmers and festival organizers must navigate this unusual restriction, blending culinary traditions with cultural respect. This law turns everyday farm life into a bizarre theater of legality, where even naming animals carries historical weight, absurdly policing identity in a way most nations wouldn't dare. In Denmark, it is illegal to start a meal with any other activity than washing your hands. This law, buried deep in culinary etiquette regulations, insists that hygiene is paramount before food consumption, turning ordinary dining into a ritualistic performance. While meant to promote health, it creates a surreal sense of legalized precision at the dinner table. Tourists may unknowingly break this ancient, overlooked rule, feeling both bewildered and constrained. The law emphasizes order over enjoyment, making the simple act of touching bread before washing hands a technical misdemeanor in a country obsessed with cleanliness and rules. In Japan, it's illegal to make loud slurping noises outside designated eating zones. While slurping noodles is culturally acceptable and even polite in restaurants, doing so publicly elsewhere can lead to fines. This law highlights Japan's intense obsession with public decorum and auditory boundaries. Imagine enjoying ramen and suddenly realizing the simple act of expressing appreciation through sound could be a criminal offense. The contrast between cultural practice and enforced order creates a surreal tension, where the pleasure of food is legally moderated, blending deep respect for tradition with strict social control over everyday bodily actions. In Thailand, it's illegal to step on money, literally. Since all Thai currency bears the image of the king, stepping on coins or bills is considered a form of lèse-majesté, an insult to the monarchy punishable by law. Even accidentally dropping a coin and touching it with your foot could land you in legal trouble. This law mixes reverence, politics, and mundane financial transactions into an absurd, high-stakes landscape where money isn't just currency, it's a sacred, heavily policed symbol, forcing residents and tourists alike to navigate everyday life with extraordinary care. In Italy, it's illegal to serve espresso after 11 a.m. in certain towns. While coffee culture thrives across the nation, strict regulations in specific regions declare that espresso is only appropriate in the morning. Serving or ordering one outside this window is technically against the law, making baristas and tourists inadvertently lawbreakers. This blends cultural ritual with legal absurdity, turning a morning pick-me-up into a regulated temporal event. Imagine enjoying a cup of coffee, only to realize that the clock, not taste, dictates legality, forcing you to surrender personal preference to bureaucratic tradition. In South Korea, it's illegal to waste food at festivals. Celebratory feasts, which often overflow with delicacies, are closely monitored under strict rules. Individuals who leave scraps behind risk fines, turning revelry into a charged legal event. This law combines environmental consciousness with ceremonial control, making waste a punishable offense. Even tourists, unaccustomed to such regulations, are expected to navigate this culinary minefield, where the joy of eating intersects with civic duty. What should be a moment of indulgence becomes an exercise in legal mindfulness, making every bite a conscious act under the watchful eye of authorities. In the United States, Alabama has an unusual law that makes it illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. Allegedly originating in the 19th century to prevent horse theft, thieves would lure horses away using ice cream as bait. The law remains technically enforceable. This absurd regulation turns dessert into a tool of criminal suspicion, blending culinary innocence with legal paranoia. Tourists unaware of this historical oddity might accidentally break it, finding themselves caught between enjoying a sweet treat and inadvertently committing a centuries-old crime. In Switzerland, it's illegal to flush the toilet after 10 p.m. in an apartment building. This bizarre law, part of noise pollution regulations, aims to maintain nighttime quiet, even at the cost of personal hygiene routines. Residents must adjust their bodily schedules to comply, turning a private, essential activity into a legally sensitive, almost ritualized act. The law transforms domestic life into a balancing act between comfort and obedience, creating an uncanny scenario where doing something as mundane as flushing could technically violate civic regulations, blending absurdity with extreme social consideration. The sale of alcohol during festivals, particularly Hindu celebrations like Ganesh Chaturthi. While designed to maintain spiritual sanctity, these rules often clash with modern celebratory practices, creating confusion for both locals and tourists. Alcoholic beverages, though legal generally, suddenly become contraband depending on the calendar, turning ordinary social enjoyment into a legally charged affair. These laws illustrate how cultural preservation intersects with legal enforcement, making the simple act of drinking a festival beverage a potential crime and reflecting India's unique blend of devotion, tradition, and bureaucratic control. In Russia, it is illegal to serve vodka in restaurants before 11 a.m. While alcohol is a major part of social culture, the law aims to curb early morning drinking. Tourists and locals alike must navigate this temporal restriction, where enjoying the nation's iconic spirit before a set hour could technically land you in trouble. Bars and festival events must strictly comply, turning a simple act of consumption into a regulated ritual. The law blends historical attempts at temperance with modern enforcement, creating a curious tension between desire and legality. In Canada, specifically in Ontario, it's illegal to eat ice cream on Sundays on public streets. While seemingly trivial, this law originates from obscure blue laws regulating public behavior on the Sabbath. Locals walking downtown with a cone could technically be committing a misdemeanor, blending religious observance with culinary enjoyment. Tourists often find this absurdity shocking, as dessert, a symbol of leisure, becomes entangled in moral and civic regulation. Public spaces transform into zones where pleasure and legality collide, highlighting how historical societal norms linger in unexpected ways even today. In Japan, it's illegal to eat while walking in certain districts, particularly in Kyoto. The law, part of local ordinances, aims to maintain street cleanliness and preserve cultural decorum. Tourists visiting shrines or traditional streets must navigate this unusual restriction, or risk being scolded or fined. The simple act of enjoying a snack on the move becomes a legally regulated performance, blending culinary indulgence with strict social etiquette. This law transforms everyday mobility into a high-stakes act of compliance, forcing both locals and visitors to respect the city's unusual but deeply ingrained public rituals. In the United States, Tennessee prohibits carrying an ice cream cone in your pocket. This may sound absurd, but the law dates back to horse theft prevention tactics in the 1800s, when thieves would lure animals with ice cream. Today, it remains enforceable, turning dessert into a peculiar legal instrument. Tourists unaware of the historical context might accidentally violate this archaic rule, highlighting the surreal persistence of outdated regulations. Here, indulgence and crime intersect in a laughably specific way, illustrating how laws can fossilize quirky, context-dependent scenarios into real, enforceable penalties decades later. In France, it's illegal to sell soft drinks in glass bottles to minors. While this sounds reasonable at first, the law is so strictly enforced that even casual gifting can become punishable. Bars, festivals, and vendors must navigate this restriction meticulously, merging public health concerns with legal rigidity. The law reflects a deeper societal obsession with protecting youth, transforming seemingly innocent actions, handing a soda to a teen, into legally questionable behavior. This creates a tension where everyday indulgence, enjoyment, and celebration are tightly policed under the guise of moral responsibility. In Singapore, it is illegal to sell or consume durian in public transportation. Known as the king of fruits, durian emits a pungent odor considered intolerable in enclosed spaces. Violators can face fines, turning natural culinary preference into a legal hazard. Tourists unaware of this regulation may shock locals simply by carrying a fruit. This law exemplifies how personal enjoyment clashes with communal order, creating an environment where the smell of indulgence is controlled by municipal authority. Even fruit becomes a source of legal tension, blending sensory experience with strict public conduct enforcement. In Italy, throwing food during festivals is sometimes illegal, depending on the region. While events like the Battle of the Oranges in Ivrea celebrate food warfare, local ordinances regulate participation to prevent injury or property damage. These laws transform playful indulgence into a carefully monitored spectacle, blending historical tradition with civic safety concerns. Tourists and locals must follow intricate rules about what can be thrown, where, and when. The absurdity lies in regulating chaotic joy, turning centuries-old revelry into a legally supervised performance, where even spontaneous acts of celebration require compliance with municipal codes. In India, in some states, drinking alcohol in public during religious festivals like Diwali is strictly prohibited. Even legally purchased spirits become contraband depending on timing and location. Police patrols monitor streets, turning celebratory indulgence into a potentially punishable offense. This law blends spiritual observance with civic enforcement, where personal desire must bow to collective sanctity. Tourists and locals must navigate a minefield of calendars and zones, ensuring that enjoyment doesn't violate morality-based statutes. Alcohol, normally a symbol of leisure, becomes a regulated instrument, fusing devotion, culture, and legal obligation. In the United Kingdom, in the city of Oxford, it's technically illegal to eat in certain museums while walking. The law is designed to protect priceless artifacts from accidental spills, transforming snack enjoyment into a potential legal offense. Tourists attempting to nibble while navigating exhibits risk fines or reprimand, highlighting how cultural preservation can dominate basic human impulses. Eating, normally mundane and private, becomes a regulated act in public spaces. This creates surreal tension between curiosity, indulgence, and obedience, emphasizing how historical values shape seemingly trivial modern legal restrictions. In South Korea, consuming alcohol publicly during national holidays can be illegal in designated zones. Festivals become legally charged events, where drinking, normally a celebratory act, intersects with government enforcement. Even if spirits are purchased legally, specific locations and timings can render consumption a punishable act. Residents and tourists alike must navigate these invisible lines, turning joy and festivity into calculated legal compliance. This unusual law exemplifies the blending of civic order with cultural celebration, making ordinary indulgence a carefully choreographed performance under the vigilant eye of authorities. In Japan, in certain cities like Kyoto, eating or drinking while walking in public streets is prohibited. This law, aimed at preserving cleanliness and cultural decorum, turns casual snacking into a regulated act. Tourists carrying street food can technically be fined for ignoring this ordinance. What seems harmless, a quick bite on the move, becomes a legal concern, blending etiquette, law, and daily life. It highlights how Japan intertwines respect for public order with personal enjoyment, transforming simple food consumption into a conscious, monitored behavior within city limits. In the United States, in Alabama, it's illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. Originating in the 19th century, the law aimed to prevent horse theft, as thieves would lure animals with cones in pockets. Today, this obscure regulation is technically enforceable, turning dessert into a symbol of criminal suspicion. Tourists and locals alike can inadvertently violate this archaic rule. The absurdity of connecting ice cream with theft demonstrates how historical context can fossilize into strange, yet legally binding quirks that survive in modern law. In Singapore, selling or consuming durian in public transport is strictly illegal. This fruit, known for its overpowering smell, has become a culinary and olfactory liability. Offenders, including unaware tourists, can face significant fines. The law transforms natural indulgence into a civic offense, balancing cultural preference against public tolerance. Even carrying the fruit into MRT stations could risk penalty. Singapore's strict urban management ensures that sensory disruption is legally controlled, making the enjoyment of durian a highly regulated act, where personal pleasure collides with communal cleanliness and municipal authority. In Italy, certain towns enforce laws restricting when and how food can be used during festivals. The famous Battle of the Oranges in Ivrea, for instance, is heavily regulated to prevent injury. Throwing oranges without following specific rules can result in fines. This legal oversight turns chaotic celebration into a controlled spectacle, blending centuries-old tradition with modern civic order. Locals and tourists must obey the exact parameters, transforming joyous indulgence into legal compliance. Food becomes both a weapon of fun and a monitored liability, highlighting absurd intersections of law, culture, and festivity. In India, consuming alcohol publicly during religious festivals like Ganesh Chaturthi is illegal in several states. Spirits purchased legally at other times become forbidden, depending on calendar dates and locations. Police patrols enforce this law strictly, turning ordinary drinking into a legal minefield. Personal celebration must bow to religious sanctity, blending devotion, civic oversight, and festival conduct. Tourists and locals must navigate complex rules to avoid penalties, highlighting a tension between enjoyment and reverence. Alcohol transforms into a legally sensitive object, merging personal indulgence with cultural compliance in deeply ritualized public spaces. In the United Kingdom, certain Oxford museums prohibit walking while eating. This law, aimed at preserving priceless exhibits, technically criminalizes casual snacking. Tourists nibbling while exploring can face fines or reprimands, making food consumption an act of legal awareness. It emphasizes the supremacy of artifact preservation over mundane human behavior. Eating, normally private and harmless, becomes a monitored activity in these spaces. This strange intersection of culture, law, and daily life forces visitors to navigate leisure with extraordinary caution, highlighting how historical values shape seemingly trivial but legally enforceable modern restrictions. In South Korea, consuming alcohol in specific public zones during national holidays is illegal. Festivals, often associated with drinking and celebration, become highly regulated events. Legal purchase does not guarantee legality of consumption if done in restricted areas or times. Residents and tourists must negotiate these invisible lines, transforming ordinary indulgence into calculated compliance. This law demonstrates how civic order and cultural festivity collide, turning joyous, traditional activities into high-stakes legal choreography. Even familiar celebratory practices require careful attention to time, place, and social expectation to avoid punishment in modern society. In France, it's illegal to name a pig Napoleon. This regulation, blending humor, history, and cultural reverence, aims to protect the legacy of the emperor. Farmers and festival organizers must navigate naming restrictions carefully or risk fines. The law transforms ordinary animal husbandry into a controlled exercise in historical respect. Tourists or foreign visitors encountering this may be baffled by the absurdity of policing names. Yet, it exemplifies France's deep connection between identity, tradition, and law, where even farm animals carry cultural weight, and a single name can become a legally sensitive act. In Denmark, dining etiquette is legally enforced. Meals must begin with hand-washing. While promoting hygiene, the law turns ordinary eating into ritualistic observance. Failing to comply, even inadvertently, is technically punishable. Tourists or locals might be bewildered when a simple act of touching food is legally charged. The regulation reflects Danish societal priorities, valuing cleanliness and civic responsibility above casual convenience. Daily life, normally private and instinctive, is converted into a structured legal performance. Eating is no longer merely nourishment. It becomes a regulated expression of civic morality and personal compliance. In Thailand, stepping on money is illegal. Thai currency bears the king's image, and contact with feet is considered lèse majesté, a serious offense. Even accidental foot contact with a coin or bill could result in legal consequences. Tourists and locals alike must exercise extraordinary care when handling money in everyday transactions. This law elevates currency from a transactional tool to a sacred symbol of national respect, blending reverence, politics, and mundane life. Simple acts like walking or dropping coins carry unexpected legal risk, highlighting a uniquely Thai intersection of law, culture, and daily routine. In Japan, public consumption of alcohol by minors is strictly forbidden, with fines and legal consequences enforced rigorously. Even small sips during festivals or family gatherings can technically break the law. This regulation reflects Japan's obsession with social order, responsibility, and protecting youth from early exposure. Celebratory drinks, normally a symbol of joy, become high-stakes acts for the underage. Tourists must navigate this hidden tension, where cultural indulgence intersects with legal scrutiny, making ordinary participation in festivities an activity requiring legal mindfulness and deep awareness of both age and public behavior. In the United States, Colorado enforces strict rules about open containers at festivals. Even holding a drink outside designated zones is illegal, creating a peculiar paradox for celebratory events like music and beer festivals. Tourists and locals alike must navigate boundaries carefully, where the freedom to sip becomes regulated. What seems ordinary, walking with a drink, can become a misdemeanor. This law exemplifies how civic order can override enjoyment, turning simple indulgence into a choreographed, legally conscious behavior, blending fun, safety, and municipal control into a strange, enforceable public performance. In Singapore, it's illegal to sell chewing gum without medical justification. Originally meant to prevent littering, the law transforms a simple pleasure into a punishable offense. Tourists unaware of this regulation can face fines simply by popping a minty treat. The law demonstrates an obsession with cleanliness and public order, where personal indulgence is secondary to civic hygiene. Even in everyday life, small consumables like gum are legally constrained, creating surreal tension between individual desire and societal rules. In this city-state, chewing is a regulated act, blending discipline with absurdity. In France, it's illegal to serve milk or certain drinks to minors in public spaces without parental supervision. While seemingly reasonable, the law is strictly enforced in schools, cafes, and festivals. Children cannot legally sip beverages unsupervised, turning ordinary consumption into a monitored act. Parents, staff, and visitors must adhere to precise rules, highlighting the French obsession with regulation and child safety. Simple nourishment becomes intertwined with legality, demonstrating how everyday acts, like giving a child a drink, can unexpectedly intersect with national law and societal expectation. In Italy, some towns prohibit eating pasta in certain public festivals outside designated zones. While pasta battles or food celebrations are traditional, municipal laws restrict who can eat and where. Tourists attempting to enjoy street food freely may inadvertently violate ordinances. The law blends historical festivity, culinary indulgence, and civic safety, transforming communal eating into a choreographed performance. Food becomes both a celebration and a legal instrument, highlighting the absurd tension between enjoyment and compliance, where centuries-old traditions are carefully monitored to maintain order, even in moments meant for joy. In Denmark, certain municipalities enforce laws where meals must start only after hand-washing. Failing to comply is technically punishable, turning ordinary dining into ritualized, regulated conduct. Tourists or residents unaccustomed to such precision may be fined for skipping this hygiene ritual. The law reflects a deep societal focus on cleanliness, discipline, and civic responsibility. Even private acts like touching food are legally charged, making ordinary meals a performance of compliance. Dining becomes an interplay of law, tradition, and social expectation, where personal routine is constrained by municipal oversight and ceremonial legal observance. In Denmark, certain municipalities enforce laws where meals must start only after hand-washing. Failing to comply is technically punishable, turning ordinary dining into ritualized, regulated conduct. Tourists or residents unaccustomed to such precision may be fined for skipping this hygiene ritual. The law reflects a deep societal focus on cleanliness, discipline, and civic responsibility. Even private acts like touching food are legally charged, making ordinary meals a performance of compliance. Dining becomes an interplay of law, tradition, and social expectation, where personal routine is constrained by municipal oversight and ceremonial legal observance. In Thailand, stepping on currency is illegal because all money bears the image of the king. Accidental contact with feet can result in severe legal penalties. Tourists must exercise extraordinary care during everyday financial transactions. Currency is elevated from a medium of exchange to a sacred symbol, blending respect, politics, and legal enforcement. Simple acts, such as picking up a fallen coin, carry potential consequences, making daily life a regulated performance of reverence. This law illustrates a uniquely Thai intersection of legality, culture, and etiquette, where even mundane monetary actions are deeply policed. In the United Kingdom, Oxford enforces regulations preventing food consumption while walking in museums and cultural sites. This seemingly trivial law is intended to protect exhibits from accidental damage. Visitors eating while moving can face fines, transforming casual enjoyment into monitored compliance. The law elevates artifact preservation above normal human habits, turning simple snacking into a legal awareness exercise. Tourists must navigate leisure with caution, highlighting how historical and cultural priorities shape modern law, where ordinary indulgence intersects with civic responsibility in ways that appear both absurd and surprisingly strict. In South Korea, alcohol consumption in certain festival zones is illegal, even if purchased legally. Public celebrations become legally constrained, forcing participants to adhere to specific locations and timings. Ordinary social enjoyment turns into a regulated act, blending civic control with cultural festivity. Tourists and locals must carefully observe these restrictions to avoid penalties, where drinking, a symbol of celebration, requires navigation of invisible boundaries. The law exemplifies the delicate balance between tradition, social order, and enjoyment, transforming routine indulgence into a high-stakes exercise in legal mindfulness during festivals. In Japan, it's illegal to drink alcohol in public parks during festivals unless in designated areas. Even casual sips at cherry blossom viewing events can technically break the law. Authorities monitor crowds, transforming ordinary celebration into legally conscious behavior. Tourists enjoying hanami picnics must follow rules carefully, where public indulgence is balanced against decorum and civic order. Drinking, normally an act of leisure, becomes regulated, emphasizing social harmony over individual enjoyment. Japan's approach ensures that festivities remain safe, orderly, and culturally respectful, turning every beverage into a legally mindful choice. In the United States, Utah enforces strict alcohol laws during certain public events, including festivals. Even legal purchases are regulated based on time, location, and type of drink. Tourists and locals attending celebrations must navigate a maze of restrictions, turning ordinary indulgence into a high-stakes act of legal compliance. Alcohol consumption becomes not just a personal choice, but a carefully monitored, context-sensitive activity. This law illustrates the tension between celebration and civic control, transforming communal enjoyment into a choreographed performance where every sip could technically have legal consequences. In Singapore, it's illegal to bring or consume chewing gum in public areas without medical approval. What appears to be a minor restriction becomes a civic responsibility, with fines for both locals and tourists. The law, designed to prevent littering and maintain public hygiene, turns chewing into a legally sensitive act. Ordinary enjoyment is constrained by municipal oversight, creating tension between personal preference and societal order. Even casual indulgence requires awareness and restraint, highlighting how Singapore's obsession with cleanliness transforms mundane habits into regulated behaviors with real-world consequences. In France, minors cannot legally consume soft drinks in public spaces without supervision. Schools, cafes, and festival grounds enforce this restriction rigorously. What seems trivial, a child drinking soda, becomes legally charged. The law reflects a deeper societal emphasis on protecting youth and maintaining public order. Ordinary refreshment is transformed into a monitored activity, blending civic responsibility with cultural oversight. Parents, staff, and visitors must adhere to these rules, demonstrating how everyday acts of nourishment are surprisingly entangled with legal enforcement and societal expectation in contemporary France. In Italy, several towns prohibit eating pasta outside festival-designated zones. Events like traditional pasta battles are heavily monitored to prevent chaos and injury. Tourists unaware of boundaries risk fines or reprimand, turning communal celebration into legal choreography. The law blends centuries-old culinary tradition with modern civic order, transforming indulgence into a carefully supervised act. Simple street food consumption is no longer just pleasure, it's a legally bound ritual. Food, joy, and compliance intersect, highlighting Italy's unusual approach to regulating festivity while preserving cultural heritage. In India, consuming alcohol in public during certain religious festivals is strictly illegal in many states. Celebratory drinking becomes temporarily restricted, with law enforcement actively monitoring streets. What is normally leisure becomes a potentially punishable offense, emphasizing cultural reverence and civic oversight. Tourists and locals must navigate shifting rules, where ordinary indulgence must bow to spirituality. Alcohol transforms from a personal choice into a regulated sacred act, illustrating India's unique integration of law, culture, and festival behavior. Celebration and legality intersect in ways that require constant awareness. In Denmark, meals must begin only after proper hand-washing in certain municipalities. Failing to comply is technically punishable. Ordinary dining turns into a structured ritual blending hygiene, civic responsibility, and legal oversight. Tourists and residents must adjust their behavior, making even casual meals a legally aware act. What should be private, instinctive, and simple, touching food, is transformed into a monitored performance. Denmark's law reflects societal priorities, emphasizing cleanliness, order, and civic discipline. Dining becomes a balance of enjoyment, compliance, and ritualized legality, turning everyday indulgence into an exercise in civic mindfulness. In Thailand, stepping on money is illegal because all currency bears the king's image. Even accidental contact with feet is considered lèse-majesté, punishable by law. Daily financial transactions require extreme awareness, as something as simple as picking up a fallen coin could result in legal trouble. Currency is more than a medium of exchange. It is a sacred symbol. This law blends reverence, cultural tradition, and legal enforcement, transforming mundane actions into high-stakes behaviors. Everyday life becomes a careful negotiation between personal activity and national respect, where legal awareness is constant. In the United Kingdom, Oxford enforces rules prohibiting eating while walking in museums and cultural institutions. Tourists consuming snacks while exploring exhibits risk fines, turning casual enjoyment into legally conscious behavior. The law prioritizes preservation over personal indulgence, making snacking an act of monitored compliance. Museums, normally spaces of leisure and learning, become zones of legal sensitivity. Visitors must navigate cultural appreciation alongside civic responsibility. Ordinary acts of consumption are transformed into deliberate, regulated behavior, highlighting the absurd yet strict intersection of law, history, and daily human impulses. In South Korea, drinking alcohol in specific festival zones is prohibited, even if purchased legally. Participants must follow location and timing restrictions carefully. Ordinary acts of celebration become regulated performances, blending civic enforcement with cultural practice. Tourists and locals must navigate invisible legal boundaries to avoid fines, transforming leisure into a disciplined act. The law exemplifies the tension between festivity and order, where indulgence is no longer spontaneous but carefully calculated. Alcohol, joy, and legality intersect, creating surreal dynamics in which public enjoyment becomes a choreographed, rule-bound activity.